we'll now have a very interesting hour to spend together. We have the session called Ignite. I'm sure you're all familiar with this one. And I call on stage Jared, who's the curator of this Ignite session, and he's a founder and CEO of Awayfine. So just during a few minutes, let's start with Awayfine before we speak about Ignite. What's Awayfine? What are you doing?
Awayfine is an email application that helps people to get away from their email. So we notify you of really timely communications. Like if a speaker here was late and he emailed me, I'd get an alert that says, hey, Jared, where am I supposed to be?
OK, I think we all know. We all need this app. OK, and what about Ignite? So how was the process? How many people did request to present on stage this year?
Sure. So just as background for Ignite, there was this movement in Japan called Peichakucha, which was this whole concept of very visual presentations where the slides automatically rotate. O'Reilly Media picked it up about maybe 7, 8 years ago. Started, I guess, Brady Forrest started bringing it to the Portland area. And it's 5 minutes, 20 slides, automatically rotating. And we had maybe 40 people that applied this year for LeWeb. We had some fantastic submissions across a range of topics. And about half the topics here are Internet of Things, but a lot of people just sharing their passions.
Cool, very different things. So I will let you moderate the thing, and pretty exciting to see all the presentation. Thank you,
Well, thank you, Cedric.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you all for coming up here tonight. Excuse me, not tonight. I'm so used to being here in the evening. Thanks for all braving after the parties, coming here and having some chance to see some great speakers. So first, I'd like to welcome up to the stage Maarten Schenk. Hi, Maarten. Hi, and you already have a mic.
Hi.
Great to have you up here. So Maarten here is an independent website developer, but actually, out of curiosity, how many of you have been to LeWeb before? Show of hands. 2 LeWebs. 3 LeWebs? 4? 5? Well, this man has been to every LeWeb, and he's going to talk about that. He also has a really great site, a recent site called You Ask It, which is kind of like the Twitter version of Chat Roulette. So I'll let Maarten here take over. Maarten Schenk.
OK, so it looks like they already skipped my first slide. That's a good beginning. So the year was 2005, and I was working at 6 Apart Europe for Loic Lemeur. And we all got an email saying that we had to invite all our contacts to a little event he was organizing in Paris called Les Blogs. So this normal people then hire a meeting room at a hotel, but he got us the French Senate, which is a cool building, but unfortunately they didn't have any coffee. They did have Wi-Fi, but it was just a single router, as you saw at the previous slide, so I'm trying to catch up like mad. So this is what we had instead of Twitter. We were using good old IRC to have a back channel to discuss what they were saying. But you didn't really need it because this was the size of the entire audience back then, so you could just reach around and hand a note. And some other traditions that got started at the first LeWeb was the after party. Back then, you could still get in without an invitation. And when your boss starts doing stuff like this, then you shout, I'm blogging this. And that's also the last time I ever wore a tie at LeWeb. So it was a great success, this first edition of Les Blogs. So Loic immediately set about organizing a second edition in Paris later that year in December. So he got a different venue so there could be more people. And also he decided to fix once and for all to fix the problem with the Wi-Fi to make sure that there would never be problems with it again. So he just doubled the capacity of the Wi-Fi. So some other traditions that got started at this edition were photoshopping the logo if something funny happened. And also having something controversial happen on the stage, like a speaker insulting a member of the audience, like Mina Trott here, who called one of our major customers an asshole live on stage back then. And of course, another tradition that was also started was bitching about the catering. Some people were complaining that there was not enough food. And you see Mark Cantor falling asleep, so they made les. So the year after, he increased the numbering, so it was the 3rd event, but he changed the name to LeWeb, like it is now, and he got an even bigger venue. But the traditions remained the same, so we had some controversial stuff happen on stage and some interesting guests, like Shimon Peres and Nicolas Sarkozy, that were added at the latest moment. And as you see, immediately the photoshops of the logo started appearing. But there was also technology back then. We didn't have any of that fancy schmancy web streaming back then. No. Just a webcam and FTP, and you're all set. You had to be creative with the camera placement if a supermodel sat down in front of you, like happened to me that year. Also, I saw the first time somebody type in 140 characters in what he called a microblog. I was sure that was never going to take off. So the next year at LeWeb 307 4th edition, officially the most confusingly named, Loïc got some better video gear, and he also moved the venue again to where we are today. So there could be even more people in the audience. And that guy I saw typing stuff into his microblog turned out to have been F. Williams of Twitter, who was on stage that year to talk about all the great things he was doing with Twitter that year. So the next year, they dropped the 3 from the name, so it became LeWeb. They cut that 3 in half, they rotated it, and they stuck it in the sign of the cloakroom, which also became another tradition, as we will see later. But the other traditions remained the same, so we had controversy with Michael Arrington insulting the European work ethic and almost not getting invited back. The Wi-Fi broke down, there was too few food, so you see one of the rare photos of food that year before it all disappeared. But the next year, at least, the Wi-Fi worked, but Twitter was down. Michael Arrington got invited back, and through some very innovative time travel technology, they managed to have LeWeb 09 in December of 2008 back then. So then there was LeWeb 10, when Loïc took a very special costume from the cloakroom, because it was so cold and snowing. And of course, as you can see in the top corner, the Wi-Fi was down again. So that's a big theme at LeWeb, the Wi-Fi going up and down. Because LeWeb 11, one of my favorite editions with a great party where the Ting Tings were performing and Karl Lagerfeld on stage as a great speaker. And also you can see in that totally not faked photo there in the top right corner that the Wi-Fi was down again. And then earlier this year, this is the second year with 2 editions, so it's not the first time. We were in London, where the musical entertainment was even better with Lindsey Stirling. And because it was happening in a converted church building, there was a huge pipe organ on the stage, which was nice. And I hope to see all of you at the next LeWeb in London.
Thank you so much, Maarten. So I hope you all can come back for 6 or 7 more LeWebs. Very excited to welcome up our next speaker, who is Sami Ben Hassine. He writes a blog that's called The Art of Living, and he's also the president for a not-for-profit that fosters development in Tunisia. And just make sure this one's working. Yeah. Is that working?
I think so.
Perfect. And yeah. I'd like to welcome again Sami with How to Lead a Fabulous Life.
So, how can you lead a fabulous life? Of course, you've heard it everywhere. Do what you love and do it often. But really, how are you going to do it? First of all, you need ideas, all kinds of ideas, all sorts of ideas. Stephen Johnson has studied where all the good ideas seems to come from. And he has found one common characteristic between all the great innovators like Darwin and else. All of them had many hobbies. They used to draw, to play instruments of music, to do chemical experiments, all sorts of things. And since they were used to live on the edge of so many areas of knowledge at the same time, all the ideas that they were getting from their hobbies would juxtapose between themselves, would clashes between themselves, and this is just how innovation is born. And then again, you need the right environment to foster the good ideas. Are you going to get them just staying in front of your computer? Of course not. You need to go outside and walk. And Rousseau just agrees by saying that my mind only works with my legs. And then again, you need to do something else. You can take a retreat once a year, just like what Bill Gates used to do. He takes all the papers that he needs to read, and then he will read and complement all the knowledge in about 1 week of writing. And then here is one tiny action for you. You need a Spark notebook. This is just a notebook where you will be taking notes of your ideas, nothing else, just your ideas. This is not a journal, and you need to read it often. And from time to time, the ideas will just pop up in your mind, only asking to be implemented. So then, after you implemented the idea, you need something else. You need to go to action. I will tell you about the story of Jayne. So Jayne went to Nepal, to a devastated Nepal, and then she just saw a little girl of 8 carrying a bag of rice who was bigger than her. And then she started crying. She said at her age, the only thing I was thinking about is my dance lessons. So she asked her parents to send her all the money that they kept apart just for her studies, and she built an orphanage starting from this. So what Magali was saying is to be relentlessly resourceful, just like what Paul Graham said. And then Magali has another characteristic, that she was observant of everything going on around her. And you need to be like this, actually. You need to observe, not just to see what's around you. You need to have a constant vigilance of the mind. So here is 3 tiny actions that you can apply right away. First one, print this out. Do 1 thing every day that scares you. And then you can take drawing lessons, actually, to improve your awareness of what's happening around you. And then if you've got any limiting beliefs, even if you don't go, just go and see a therapist. This will really help you for life. Then again, from time to time, you will be afraid. And what you need to do is really to be aware of the shortness of life. This will really help you. Science agrees with that. It's saying that being aware of mortality would just help you to reprioritize all your goals and all your targets. And then you will gain something much better, which is lucidity. You will be able to see the infinite importance of every second of your life. And then you need something else. You need accountability groups. This is a group of people, a group of mutual improvement that will meet once a week, and they will just share their goals and will hold accountable to each other. Benjamin Franklin used to do it, and he called it Ginto. But here is a more contemporary example. This is the PayPal mafia, all the guys that went wealthy after PayPal went public. And then even after that, they continued to help each other. And they went on to create some of the most successful companies of Silicon Valley, like YouTube, like LinkedIn. They stayed super connected. So here is 1 teeny action again. Just reach out today to a group of friends, send them an email, and ask them, let's meet once a week. Let's hold accountable to each other. And please, you need something very important. You need to speak to each other with radical honesty. Just say things as they are. Just have a child mind. And don't just have a child mind during the accountability groups. Always have this mind. This, in other words, this beginner mind. You need always to see things as if you are seeing them for the first time. You can take the example of Amy Carbone from Pixar. She said to always drop the first thing that comes to mind, then the second thing, then the third thing, and then once you get rid of everything obvious, then and only then you can really create stuff. And then there is this comments by Jonathan Rosenberg about an article about the leadership lesson of Steve Jobs. And he said, I've known Steve Jobs for 30 years, and the real lesson, it's not like focus and talk to people, that kind of thing. The real lesson is just to drop all the preconceived ideas and just open yourself to the raw of experience going through you. This is what it really means by having this beginner mind. And then last thing, you've heard some of this already, but until now, it didn't really work out for you. You know why? Because there is one missing component. There is the constant training of your mind, the daily exhortation of all these rules. You need to review them every day. You need to put them in striking formats, like maxims, like personal stories, and then you need to review them every day. And you need to take flight every day for a moment that can be brief, as long as it is intense. I wish you a fabulous life. Thank you.
Thank you, Sami Ben Hassine. It's very inspiring. So the first of our talks here are a little sporadic, or a little people sharing their passion. He writes about this all the time at The Art of Living. And then we'll cut over to Internet of Things. Next, I'd like to welcome up Magali Carbone. How many of you are in subscription commerce websites, e-commerce? Anybody? A few folks. Well, she did her thesis recently on this topic and has a lot of great research to share. Magali.
Hello, everybody. So subscription-based commerce is a really trendy topic, at least, and kind of new, at least here in France. But if there were a lot of articles about it, nobody makes a real study yet. So we decided to study this business model according to 3 main concepts.
Just 1 second, the slides will show up, I'm sure. Not a problem.
Okay. So subscription, to understand how Okay. So first of all, it's important to have in mind that subscription is not a revolutionary business model. It's a traditional one, and that internet brings something new to it and make it the new things of internet, of e-commerce in 2011. So it was quite a challenge for subscription to rise online. And in 2009, the first product subscriptions arrived on the US market. Concerning the French market, the first subcom arrives in June 2011 with 1.5 new websites per month and an obligation-free model. Another important part of this business model is Tryvertising, as the trial gets a real effect on buying act. But we thought that maybe it wasn't the same when you know that you will receive a new box of products in 1 month. So if Tryvertising is about making a physical experience, it's also a social one. Because nowadays, consumers are more like twinsomer, and they want to have opinion from people like them. So curated-based e-commerce involves curation-based commerce involves the selection made by an expert in a certain domain, choosing the best product for you. And in Subcom, there is a mix of curation with product curation, content curation, and social curation. The content curation is made by the websites on their blog and with video sharing, and the social curation is due to the high level of interaction between subscribers. Curation also responds to the information overload that we all faced when we try to buy something on the internet. So now we talked about all the concepts. It's time to see the research and the results of the study. So in the first part, we try to know why people subscribe to those kind of websites. We have like 5 factors, and we try to know which one is the most important for people to subscribe. In the second part, we try to know what people do once they receive their box. I mean, if the trial, the community, or the surprise effect has an impact on the product purchase, the box loyalty, or the word of mouth. So to do this, we make an online survey with 6 different paths in order to make a difference between subscribers, non-subscribers, people who never subscribe, and those who already unsubscribe from one website. So in 4 days, we get almost 400 responses, with mostly women response, because the subcom target is mostly female. And with the help of statistics, we show that subscription motivation was the surprise effect. It's, in fact, surprise effect is a discriminatory factor between subscribers and non-subscribers. The product purchase is, in the subcom model, also aims by trial and not by the opinion of community. But for the loyalty in the box, it's the community that is discriminatory. People show loyalty for the box because of their part of the community. And to finish, we saw that neither the level of surprise or the amount of trial have an impact of the word of mouth. That means that it's not because you're more surprised that you will talk more about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Magali. Next, I'd like to welcome up Lindholm. He was very early to the mobile world. Now he has sort of an interesting take in the Internet of Things, sort of building kind of a back end for wearable jewelry, so sort of the Android of the jewelry space. So just imagine in wearables that you need to have these platforms in which you're building on top of. Lindholm, you're joining us in just a moment. Thank you.
So the journey to social jewelry starts with the nomadic Hassa tribe in Tanzania. They use armbands as a sign of their lifelong marriages. Jewelry is humanity's oldest creation. The design of seashell-based necklaces has not changed much in this time. It even survived an ice age. All around the world, mothers teach their daughters to make necklaces and armbands. It reinforces the oldest and most powerful rituals of self-expression and decoration. Jewelry is by nature wearable and mobile. It was used to store valuables, and it hence became the first form of currency. We love vanity. The power to enhance our personality and beauty is undisputed. It probably increases our chances of mating. Assyrian kings used jewelry as a sign of power. You earn the right to wear it, thus creating envy and craving. Jewelry is a powerful religious symbol, and it's been used to increase the bond between the humanity and the divine. It brings people hope. Tattoos are incredibly powerful forms of decoration. They are certainly on the roadmap of bionic vanity when we get functional jewelry. Scarcity and marketing made diamonds the ultimate form of class during the 20th century. In 1998, Vertu and Frank Novo's iconic design fused electronics and jewelry for the first time. One of these can be yours for 250,000 euros. The boundaries are blurring. Marco Mavilla's fantastic armband that lights up the diamonds to tell the time is probably the most beautiful watch. Or is it a bracelet? Jawbone introduced the first connected jewelry last year, where Yves Behar, its designer, says, designing for the body is the hardest part. Because now jewelry gets a gut, and hence form has to follow function, or function follow form, which becomes a really huge design challenge. We now have more processing power on the wrist than we had in the phones of the late 90s. And when mega brands like Nike introduce the fuel band and light up, like Coldplay has done to their audience, the audience has never been more connected. The shine is an interesting form of social jewelry, where by placing it on the iPhone, it starts to sync automatically, increasing the bond between the wearable and the phone. And when you think of your lover from a jewelry you got, the communication is broken, the message doesn't go through. This will certainly be fixed. We worked with some brilliant designers of simplicity, Juha Kosonen and Sami Koskela, to design some future visions for you. These types of armbands aren't feasible to do due to the lack of curved displays, round displays, but they're certainly signs of the future. they're being worked on in labs all around the world at present. Eventually, we'll get to the connected rings, where we then are able to, with a simple touch and stroke, share an emotion to our loved ones. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian.
Great, thanks.
So the next two speakers we have actually are coming from the same company. So one of them is the chief of design, the other on the architecture side, both from Smart Things. So Smart Things is interesting. They raised about $1.2 million on Kickstarter, so sort of the biggest Kickstarter raise in the Internet of Things space. And James is going to talk about designing the Internet of Things. So I'm going to welcome up James Stolp. Thank you, James.
Good morning. I'm a designer, and I love technology, so for me, these are really exciting times. Apologies. Wait a minute. Design, thanks to the efforts of designers and companies that have focused on building beautiful products that are also usable, design has entered the vocabulary of the consumer and is now part of the decisions that they make about what technology and products to add to their lives. This trend has impacted the growth rate and acceleration curve of three key phases of the evolution of the internet. The knowledge graph, the social graph, and now the Internet of Things, or the physical graph, which promises to bring everyday objects all around us online. Let's think about the knowledge graph for just a moment. It's pretty amazing, actually. All of the world's knowledge and experience and data, indexed, searchable, at the tip of your finger, within seconds from almost anywhere in the world. But it didn't start that way. It actually started as something much more basic and harder to use. It was the steady march of design together with technology that innovated and revolutionized the user interface of the knowledge graph and made it something that is part of our everyday lives. And what about the social graph? Who knew just a few years ago that we would be connecting with so many friends and family and sharing so much every day with them? Again, it was designed together with technology that revolutionized the interface of the social graph and made it more readily accessible and something that we do every day. So where are we in this? So ultimately, these infinitely complex things, the knowledge graph and the social graph, are made invisible. They're all around us and influence everything that we do. They're always evolving and adapting to us. So where are we today with the physical graph and applying design and technology effectively? I'd say that we're just out of the starting blocks. And we have a lot of work to do to realize the full potential of the physical graph to change the world around us. Fortunately, we've been here before, and we can look at what we've done with the knowledge graph and with the social graph to get some idea of where to go from here together. So here are a few ideas that I have about things that we should all keep in mind as we work together to make the physical graph a reality. One, make it easy. This is about reduction of time to value for your customers. How quickly can they purchase your product, get it out of the box, install it, and begin to get real value out of it? We need to reduce that time to value as much as possible. We need to make the Internet of Things intelligent, and it's not just about individual devices and what they're capable of, but it's also about connecting them to the cloud and tapping into the context and data that's available there to make them more intelligent and personal. Not just, we need to make it open, so not just the device itself in the cloud, but also how does it interact with other devices? How do devices work together to reduce friction and make the usability that much better for the customer? Let's make it mobile, not just because we all have a mobile phone in our pockets and in our hands, but because the mobile phone is also an important part of the physical graph and collects data and can provide context to you that can influence and personalize the user experience. We need to make this beautiful in industrial design and software design because beauty creates an emotional connection with your customers, and that's going to make it something that's going to make the physical graph something that really explodes. As designers, we need to learn new tricks sometimes, and software designers have had to do this over the last several years in terms of being agile. Now I believe that this applies to industrial design and hardware development as well. So we need to focus on rapid iteration and quickly adapting to our customers' needs. Ultimately, we need to do this together as makers and developers and designers, as a community focused on standards and common approaches to the challenges in order to really realize the full potential of the physical graph. And ultimately, that is to make it livable, something that disappears seamlessly into our lives and allows the physical world around us to adapt and respond to us. So that's something that I'm focused on, is creating this community and this discussion. And I'd like you, I'm available at build.smartthings.com. I'd like to continue the conversation there, and I look forward to seeing you. Thank you,
James. And now we're going to invite up his colleague, Jeff Hagins, who's going to talk about the architecture side of this. You may have seen Jeff, actually. He was on the main stage yesterday. And both of them have done quite a bit at Smart Things. So Jeff Hagins, please come on up on stage. Thanks so much to have you again.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. So I want to talk to you for a few minutes this morning about the concept of abstraction and the importance of abstraction in building what we call an open architecture for the Internet of Things. We live in an increasingly abstract world. Everybody in this room uses technologies every single day that depend on dozens of layers of abstraction just to function. And over the last 20 years, we've actually added even more layers. And most of us don't actually know how all that stuff really works. You know, even technologists may appreciate what something like TCP/IP does for us, but it doesn't mean that we actually understand how it works at a low level. And that's actually a good thing, because abstraction powers innovation. Right? Without abstraction, technology innovation would actually move at a snail's pace. And without enough abstraction, it would move even slower. And we know that because before the internet, technology evolution actually did move at a snail's pace. So what are the key layers of abstraction for the Internet of Things? Right? What are the things that are going to help us move the Internet of Things from the nascent to the mature? First is what we call the physical graph. The physical graph creates a virtual representation of the real-world objects. When I interact with the virtual representation of an object, it changes the physical object in the real world. And when I interact with the physical object, it changes the virtual representation of the object. And that's good because it makes it easy to interact with the real world without knowing how this stuff actually works. Second is security. We have to have security on top of the physical graph. In order for the Internet of Things to take off, we all have to be comfortable and feel secure about using it. And a lot of people are quick to point out potential vulnerabilities of the physical graph or the Internet of Things. But security done correctly is also a feature, because a physical key to open your door is just a key. But a virtual key can work only on certain days or only for certain people. Right? It adds functionality. Third is visibility and control of things. And this isn't for users, but for developers. How do I access the Internet of Things as a developer and access the objects and control them? And done correctly, it allows me as a developer to deal with something more like this instead of something like this. And that's important because it reduces friction for the developers and the makers that are helping to realize this vision. Layer 4 is discovery and intelligence, the application of applications to the physical graph. Right? How do I make it do what I want it to do and add value into my personal life? And we need to think about the paradigm that we want to have here. Is it an open marketplace where I can go and discover applications that meet my needs? Or is it a set of closed proprietary solutions? Perhaps there's actually room for both. The layer 5 is predictability. Predictability makes sense of all the massive data that the Internet of Things is going to collect in order to analyze that data, understand past behaviors, and help predict future needs. It takes all that data and turns it into the ability to automate applications, to be able to create an application for you based on your past behaviors and past events. Putting it all together, we get an architecture, a layered architecture, a set of abstractions that start to inform what a set of standards might look like for the Internet of Things. We're missing some standards right now for the Internet of Things. And we believe in an architecture that provides a loose coupling between all of these layers. Because a loose coupling instead of a tight coupling is going to provide more choice for users, but also it's going to power more rapid innovation. We believe in the idea of open standards for these layers. While we're building a solution, I'd like to see standards for every single one of these layers so that you can plug in at whatever layer you want to in order to interact. And it's important to recognize that this isn't all just cool and fun. The potential for the Internet of Things is to solve real and important problems for consumers, businesses, and society as a whole. It's not all just about turning on my hot tub remotely. Abstraction plus loose coupling plus open standards equals success. Right? If we can address as a community these concepts, these requirements, and define a set of open standards, then we'll all be more successful as we bring the physical graph online. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I just want the hot tub. But so we've talked a lot about the standards and the background, the architecture, and the design for the Internet of Things. But we're not designing for things, we're designing for people ultimately. So the next couple speakers are going to sort of take a view on that side of it. So next I'd like to welcome up Frederic Mazzella, who, how many of you have ever used a car sharing service before? He runs BlaBlaCar, which is the largest car sharing and ride sharing service here in Europe. And he's going to talk about in people that we trust. Frederic.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. If you've ever needed a nanny or a tradesman or a PHP developer to help you out, you've probably spent ages checking their references and making sure then that they were doing a good job. You had to build your trust in them. Once that trust was established, though, things got faster and easier. You saved a lot of time afterwards. Trust is an investment which turns into a time saver. The problem is, though, we spend on average 5 hours per month building new relationships of trust with new people in personal or professional situations. On a world level, this represents trillions of euros worth of euro lost. The problem is, this trust is stuck in our minds and only there. You can sometimes extract trust from the minds of your friends or family member, because if you're looking for a nanny or a PHP developer, they can probably recommend one. But you can't extract trust from the minds of people you don't know. So the big question is, how can we release the value of trust on a worldwide scale? Remember, it's worth trillions of euros. There is a reason why I'm asking this today at LeWeb. We have developed the habit of reading and writing online ratings on just about everything. Products, services, shows, places, and even people. And we love these ratings. 75% of us trust online ratings, when only 45% of us trust ads on TV or radio. Online ratings are becoming widespread people-to-people trust. And they are the first pillar of every peer-to-peer website, especially in the sharing economy for sites like Airbnb or BlaBlaCar. But power users like you know that you can't always trust ratings. They could be fake. They could be left by a friend or a competitor. Now, thanks to online ratings, thanks to online transactions, we now have the possibility to know who paid what and when. And this is the second pillar of peer-to-peer websites. We are creating massive new value by combining online ratings and online payments. This makes online ratings much more trustworthy. So we've applied that in the BlaBlaCar community, and the results are pretty impressive. Before 2009, no trusted profiles. In 2009, we added online ratings. And in 2012, we now have online payments. we now transport more than 3 million passengers per year in Europe thanks to trust. The fact that economy and trust are correlated is nothing new. Nobel Prize-winning studies show that GDP per person and the trust between citizens are directly linked. The more we trust each other, the more we produce value together. Unfortunately, the reverse is also true. Look at the state of our economy today. We're in a recession, and we don't trust our financial systems. We don't even trust our politicians to steer us towards growth. The situation seems hopeless. We've lost trust. If anyone knows a superhero who can step in, now is the time to call them. Well, I know the guy. It's not Superman. It's not Batman. It's Trustman. Trustman, superpower, is trust. And his equipment is made of online trusted profiles. But we can all have online trusted profiles. So we can be heroes. Yes, we can. We can be Trustman. You and me. Yes, we can. And you can too. Here, we have other Trustman. You too. Woo! We have lots of Trustmen. And I am Trustwoman. Actually, all of us here are already superheroes. Thanks to our online profiles, we're free to rent our neighbor's car and to head out of town. We're free to earn extra money by renting out our spare room. We're even free to share a ride together to go just about anywhere. We are building new value by sharing our trust. This is a new economic era, the era of trust and freedom. Don't forget, you too can be Trustman. So give yourself a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Frederic. Do you trust this man? Yes. So that is the Internet of Trust, part of the Internet of Things, and I would happily rent a car on BlaBlaCar. The next person I'd like to welcome up here is Matthias Lufkens. He formerly was the digital director at the World Economic Forum, and now is for Europe at Burson Marsteller. And he's going to talk about the connected world that we live in, as a matter of fact, the connected village that he specifically lives in. Matthias Lufkens.
Thank you, Jared. Good morning. I want to tell you the story about my village, my connected village, or as they say in French, mon village branché. I live on the southern shores of Lake Geneva in a small French village, not far from Geneva. The local authorities don't provide free Wi-Fi, and there are not many local hotspots. It has a population of 2,200, most of which work in Geneva. It was started as an agricultural settlement, but it does not have any historic sites compared to the medieval town of Ivoire that you might have heard about, which is one of the major tourist attractions. However, in the 1960s and 70s, the French factories used to send their workers to the region on paid leave. Today, the holiday homes are falling into ruins and nobody's taking care of them. However, we do attract tourists in summer. Our local shady beach is quite popular in July and August, and sometimes the village is called the Saint-Tropez of Lake Geneva. And when the southwesterly wind is blowing, our local beachhead becomes the windsurf and kitesurf hotspot. But that only happens 20 days a year, and they rarely fall on a weekend. In winter, the locals hit to the ski slopes in the mountains around Messery, and it can become quite cold in the lake when the activity on the lake stops. But I digress. I want to tell you about the social media revolution of this village. The local baker does not have a website or Facebook page. When he goes on annual leave, he just puts up a sign on the window to tell his customers that he is closed. The mayor communicates via a newsletter which is distributed to each household every month. The local council does not send it via email and is not a fan of Facebook. The local school communicates via a billboard in front of the school gates. And every year the parents take a picture of the new class composition, which they will then share on social networks. So with this rudimentary communication, we decided to create a Facebook page, an unofficial Facebook page for the village. You will tell me nothing special about a Facebook page. Well, this one is special because it is a citizen initiative created by citizens from the village without any help from the local authorities. We also plotted the cafes, the restaurants, and the major sites on Foursquare, and the posts from Facebook are shared on Twitter, where we almost have 100 followers now. The page is managed by a group of 15 volunteers, including the head of the local tennis club, the leader of the choir, the head of the Parent-Teachers Association, and even the correspondent of the local newspaper shares news on the page. Over the past, we're lucky also to have an amateur photographer who was born in the village. She's one of the major contributors to the page, sharing pictures about the sunset on the mountains and the sunrise over the lake. And over the past 18 months, the page has almost 200 followers, which is 10% of the local population. And some of the posts get over 1,000 views. Like this one, a couple of days ago, this car crashed into the tea room. The driver confounded reverse and drive and smashed into the sliding doors. Luckily, no one was hurt. When a new place opens in our village, it does make headlines in the local newspaper and, of course, on our Facebook page. And in the comments, you have interesting posts about delectable dishes. The local hairdresser raised giggles among the English-speaking crowd when he changed his name to Hair Mess, a messy homage to the French design firm and our local village. Our aim with this Facebook page is that we encourage the local authorities, especially the tourism office, to join this citizen-powered page, because we believe any communication today for a village, a city, a government, or even companies cannot be done without the help of the people, the residents, the citizens, and the employees. And I think in Messri we have shown it's the people who drive change from the bottom up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthias. So Matthias has shared about the people that drive change from the bottom up. Well, I guess at the bottom up would be the little people. And Jayne Coulthard, I'd like to welcome on stage here. She's going to talk about them. She's going to talk about the Internet of childish things. Jayne Coulthard. There you go. All right. I hope those microphones are on. I think so.
Hello, I'm Jayne Coulthard, and an online business expert in a very small town in Fife, Scotland. I love searching the internet for the latest technical innovations, but I have a more important demand of my time, my family. It's just me and my little ladies, Arwen, 5, who wants to be a performer, and Lavana, 7, who wants to be an inventor. And she is very keen to do that, and I'm not a very practical person. So I find, these are two bright and lovely girls. And they're at that age where they are very curious about everything in the world. To do with sport, ecology, anything you can think of, they have questions on it. They have questions. A lot of questions. And, you know, this is obviously a good thing. A child continuously asking questions. You can still tell they're still breathing. There we were at the Science Centre in Paris, all the different elements there, and my child's asking so many questions about everything. I wish the internet was connected into these places so I could explain everything that we were doing there and then. But to be honest, being a single mother and running a business and trying to bring up my daughters in an intellectually stimulating environment, it does get very hectic. So I'm grateful we live in a time where I can feed so much of their curiosity online. Lavana, my 7-year-old, prefers Google for her research, and my 5-year-old prefers apps. Either way, the existence of the internet helps me in an uphill battle. Seriously, if I could get them adopted by Siri, I would. I appreciate the contribution the internet makes to the development, but I'm very aware it's in a one-dimensional way. They are on the internet, but it's not really in their lives. Imagine if we have all that learning not only on screen, but flowing into the physical objects they can interact with in a truer, fuller sense. I'm also aware of the value of hands-on learning. Each week I take my children to Fife Young Engineers Club, and we've created the Mars rover, robots, the fourth row bridge, and many other interesting objects. Now, there's nothing new about science and engineering clubs, but to see their joy in creating new objects and pulling together real objects that have practical application makes me see the difference between the qualitative real world and online learning. I wonder what will happen when we take all the learning potential on the internet and we let it flow into the physical environments and objects in which our children can grow. As a mother in a small town, I'm really looking forward to the internet of childish things. And here we have an example of a physical object connected to the internet interacting with children in a learning environment. And I've done a lot of research in this area recently, and if you'd like to get my report on what exists just now for children to learn with the Internet of Things, please get in touch. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jayne. So Jayne spent over 12 years as a social media strategist and in all this space, and I apologize for not a more thorough introduction before, but I forget a lot of things. And actually, that's what this next talk and the final talk is about here at Ignite. I'm particularly excited to welcome Robert Moffat from Balderton Capital, a venture capital firm that has over $1.9 billion in management. He's going to talk about some pretty incredible applications. Do you want a microphone? Sorry, it's... You can use that. Perfect. Robert Moffat talking about augmented memory. Thank you.
Very good. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for making it in. So I'm going to talk about augmented memory. I'm sure you've seen this chart before. A couple of highlights. I mean, this is the sheer amount of information we have to handle. Every minute, 700,000 Facebook posts are made, 700,000 status updates on Facebook. How do I make that personal? For me, I see 80 new pieces of information an hour. I track this on Archify, of which I'll talk more about later. But it helps me keep track of everything I see. There's no way I can possibly remember that in this day and age. So what is the impact of all this on our minds? Scientific research from last year, when people expect to have future access to information, much lower rates of recall of the information, but improved recall of where to find that information in future. So our minds are changing. How do we actually handle all of this? 3 approaches I'm going to touch on very briefly. Self-improvement, using software, and then the human augmentation side. How do we use machinery combined with software here? What's the potential for self-improvement? A woman on the left here is Jill Price. She can remember every hour of every day for the last 32 years of her life. That just shows what the human brain is capable of. The question is, how do you unlock that huge computing power you have? This gentleman is Ed Cook. He can memorize a 1,000-digit number in 1 hour. More interestingly, he can teach an American journalist, Josh Furr, to become US memory champion over the course of only 1 year. He's now applying that to his company, Memrise, which is a Balderton investment. He can learn 6 times faster with Memrise. So learning Mandarin, for example, by these sort of memorable memes and by intelligently repeating the information at the right intervals. Lumosity, you probably heard of, raised $70 million venture capital. They claim they can improve your memory by 10% if you're a regular user. 10% is great, but that's nothing compared to the orders of magnitude more information we have to handle. So you've got to use software to do that. 3 approaches, Google, Archify, DataHug. Google first, I'm going to see the screen in a second. You're probably all familiar with the Google personal search results. And bring in your Gmail, bring in your Google Drive, bring in your personal browsing history. I think something like 20% of all Google queries are indirectly related to trying to find something that you saw before. All very good, but all limited to Google. Archify's approach is to take that and take it broader. So it brings in Facebook information, LinkedIn, Twitter, makes all of that searchable, and makes it searchable across any platform. So very interesting, launched last week. Final approach is, how do you take that broader? How do you make it collaborative with your colleagues? How do you have a shared memory with your colleagues? And DataHug does this. You see an interesting company, it shows you that one of your colleagues talked to them 73 days ago, and you understand the context of that conversation. So finally, the human augmentation side. How do you go further than this? How do you go beyond software? Larry Page likes to talk about the computer attached to your brain. How do we move towards that? Somewhat scarily, that actually is already happening. Scientists have put a chip into a rat's brain, and by sending electronic signals, they can get it to remember actions it has performed before. This came out last year. Still a long way away from applying that to humans, so we need to use use other objects for this. So this gentleman is Gordon Bell, long-term Microsoft employee. He's been wearing these kind of collection of gadgets around his neck for the last 10 years and records every moment of his life. Memoto is a Scandinavian startup launching early next year. Much more elegant way to do this. Little clip-on camera records every minute of your day and makes it searchable. Very helpful, but to retrieve it, you have to then look at your mobile app. So obviously the Google Glass attempts to address this by beaming the right information to you at the right time on top of what you're seeing in the real world, modeled beautifully by Larry Page there. And the obvious use case for me for Google Glass is conferences. You see this sort of good-looking gentleman, you have no idea who he is. It would overlay on top his LinkedIn profile, his latest sort of Twitter post. So you've got the context and you actually pretend you really remember that person. Obviously, there's downsides. I'd urge you to watch a program called Black Mirror, which you can find on 4 on Demand. It shows the sort of worrying consequences of perfect memory and how it can sort of destroy human relationships. Definitely worth a watch. So fascinating, very broad area, far more than I could cover here. Some challenges to worry about, to think about over the next 10 years. How do you retrieve complex queries? How do you filter signal from noise? How do you remember connections and not just facts? And most importantly, how do you forget? Thank you very much.